Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Space Coconuts and today we'll be talking about game development. We have an exciting tutorial for you all aspiring game developers out there. We'll be diving into the basics of Unity and learning how to make a player move. So if you're new to game development or Unity, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Before we begin, make sure you have Unity installed on your computer. Open Unity and create a new project by clicking the New Project button. In here, I'll be using the editor version 2022 3.14f1. This is just my personal preference. This is just what I had it set up as. You're more than welcome to select any editor version that you wish, but today we'll be doing a 3D project. I'll be naming this project Player Movement Tutorial. That looks good. And then now that we have that, all you have to do now is create project. Now that we have this set up, our screen is opened up. You can customize your windows however you'd like. I just prefer mine just to be a little smaller. Now we're just going to go over here into the hierarchy and we're going to right click 3D object, and I like to do mine as a capsule. Once you have this, I'm going to name this player. Alright, now the player needs something to stand on. So let's go back to the 3D object and let's do a plane. Alright, and we're going to call this floor. As you can see, the player is in the ground. So what we're going to do, highlight the player, and using the green arrow, we're going to move it up. Or you could do it over here at the Y and just click 1. That automatically puts it right at the bottom, so you don't have to worry about where it needs to go or anything like that. Now, if you do have it set up differently, you're more than welcome to just play around with it however you like. So once we have this, our little player, we can't move it. So if we click play, you can't do anything. You can't control it, nothing. So let's fix that. So what you're going to do is down here at the bottom, or go over to add component. I prefer to just create it like this. What you're going to do is right click on the assets, create, then you're going to go over to C# script. What we're going to do is name this player movement. There we go. Click enter, and that's going to compile the script. Alright, so once that is done, you're just going to double click to open it in whatever software that you like to use for coding. I prefer Visual Studios. Alright, once this is now loaded up, what we're going to do is start by creating some different variables that we can use for later on. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we need a character controller, because the player cannot move unless it has a character controller. So I like to use the serialized field. We can do the character controller and it's going to automatically pop up, and what we're going to name this is controller, just like that. So what this does is it's going to set up a little field just to the side on the inspector named character controller. And what you're going to do is add the component, and we can actually add it right now. So go over to the player, click add component, and then just type in character controller right here, and it's going to be right here. So now that we have this, let's go back to our player movement, and we're going to want to set up a player speed. So let's get the serialized field, and let's do a float called player speed. Oh, all right. And of course, we're also going to need to jump. So let's do jump. I'm just going to do jump height. Jump speed, I don't think we're going to need that right now. We're going to do a jumps max. This is going to allow us to basically double jump or triple jump, whatever you would like to do with that. I'm just going to throw this in as a little bonus kind of thing to see how you would do that. All right, now we do need a gravity value. So gravity value. All right, now that we have that, we're going to go down here and we're going to make these private, and we're just going to do a vector 3. This allows the player to actually move, and we're going to call this move. Next, we're going to add another vector 3, and we're going to call this player velocity. All right, now that we have that, we're going to create a private bool to check if the player is grounded. All right, and once we have the private bool for the grounded player, what we need to add in is a private integer. So private int, and we're just going to name this jumped times. All right, so this is what's going to count to see how many times we jumped. All right, now once we get down into our update, what we're going to do is call our grounded player, and we will set that equal to the controller dot is grounded. So the character controller automatically sees if it's grounded, if it's just on the ground level. So we're going to set the grounded player to true if it's on the ground. All right, so now let's do an if statement. If grounded player and player velocity dot y is right here. Right, then we're going to do the if statement for grounded player. So what this does is if the player is grounded, so it's on the floor, and player velocity is less than 0, what we're going to have to do is set the player velocity back to 0, because it will never be just 0. It will continuously go down just a little bit. So we need to make sure that it goes back to 0. And to do that, we're just going to do this simple thing. Player velocity dot y is equal to 0f. The f is just a float. All right. So next we're going to do the jumped times. Jumped times equals 0. So once the player is standing still, the jump times will be 0. All right. Once we have that, we will go down. I like to do my movement a little bit differently than how most people do that. So what I want to do is set up a float, and I'm going to call this horizontal input. Okay, and we're going to set that equal to input dot get axis. All right, we're just going to name this horizontal, and just like that. Okay, now Unity already has the horizontal as A and D, so we don't really have to do much with that. We just have the horizontal input deriving from this, so we can call this later on throughout the script. It just makes this so much easier. Now that we have the horizontal movement, we need the vertical movement. So what I like to do is just copy this and then pasting it right underneath. Now obviously we're just going to call this vertical. That's not how you spell vertical. And we're just going to call this vertical input, get axis, and we're going to call this vertical. Vertical. All right. Now that we have this, and we can call this anywhere, we're going to have to talk back to the vector 3 move. Okay. So we're going to do move is equal to horizontal input, and it's already right here. And what we're going to need to do is times it by transform dot right. Okay, and we're going to add the vertical input and then multiply that by the transform forward. So that gets us our basic move functions right here. Okay, then what we're going to do is do controller dot move, and the controller already has a move thing with it, and so all we have to do is input our move. Now this is where it kind of sort of gets tricky. So we could do this and that'd be fine. However, whenever you go to different computers or you actually publish this game, what it's going to do is this is going to be different for everybody who plays the game. If you have a faster computer, it's going to go much faster. But if you have a slower computer, it's going to move much slower. So to fix this, what we're going to do is times it by time delta time. Alright, and we're also going to times this by the player speed, is what I should have done earlier. So what time delta time does is it changes it from being computer based to time based. So instead of moving really fast, determining on what your computer is, this would be a lot simpler and it levels the playing field for everybody. Alright, now that we have that, let's save this real quick and let's go back. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to drag this onto the player. I like to drag mine all the way up to the top. So as you can see, it has controller and none selected. So what you can do is come down here, click and drag, and you can drag it right here. Alright, now you can set the player speed. I normally like to set mine to, let's say 6. The jump height, let's do 2. Jump max, let's just go for 2. Alright, gravity value, we could hard code this, but on some things I just leave it to everybody else. So what I like to do is a -10. That's close to the Earth gravity. However, whenever we start this, we're going to see that there's some problems. Okay, so we do move using the W, A, S, and D keys, also with the arrow keys on your keyboard. So that is now working. One other problem that we have so far is we can't jump. So if you click spacebar, you're not going to be able to jump. Let's dive in and figure out how to fix this. So to fix the jumping issue, we need an if statement to see if a button was pressed. So how we're going to do this is if input dot get button down. All right, and this is going to be jump. Okay, once we have that, if get button down jump, which is the space bar, and jump times is less than jumps max, meaning that we can still jump because we haven't hit the max yet, we're going to set the player velocity dot y is equal to mathf dot square root, and we're going to do the jump height times -2f times the gravity value, meaning that once we jump, what it's doing is taking the jump height, multiplying it by -2, and then multiplying it by the gravity value to see how high we're going to jump. All right. And then while we're doing this, we're going to do jump times plus plus. So what that does is it's going to increment the jump times up here that we have the private integer, and that's going to tell that we've jumped. Next, now that we have that working, what we're going to do down here is player velocity dot y is plus equal to gravity value, and then we're going to multiply that by time dot delta time. Again, this is just to make sure that everything runs smoothly and is on a time basis and not a computer basis. Same thing with the controller move. So what we're going to do is do controller.move, and we're going to do the player velocity, and we're just going to multiply this by time.delta time. Okay, now that we have this, we're going to save that, and we're going to go back into Unity. Okay. Now you're not going to see any changes right off the bat because what we did was in the background. So if you click play, this should automatically work. Okay, we have the movements, and when we click space, we jump. Now as you can see, it goes a little bit slow when we're coming down. That's not too big of an issue. Next, we're going to be working on the camera movement, because as you can see, the cursor just moves side to side and up and down and in circles, and it doesn't actually move where the player needs to go. It doesn't feel like an actual game. So to fix this, we're going to need another script. So what you're going to do is down here, right click, click create, and then C# script. Now we're going to call this camera movement. Okay, once that is done, what we're going to do is we're going to open it. Now for the camera movement, it's going to be very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to go right up here, just like we did with the player movement, and we're going to make a serialized field. And we're just going to make this an integer, and this is going to be our sensitivity. Alright, now that we have that, we're not going to hard code it just yet. 3 more serialized fields, and we're going to make these, 2 of them are going to be ints and 1 of them is going to be a bool. I'll explain the bool here in a bit. Alright, now that we have the serialized field as an integer, we're going to do lock vert min. Alright, and we're going to do another one, lock vert max. What this is going to do is going to limit us so we don't look all the way up and go back around. It'll just kind of stop. So we have a minimum and a maximum of our camera rotation. Alright, and we're going to add in the last serialized field, and this is going to be the bool, and it's going to be invert y. Just in case you wanted to know how to invert the y-axis, this is a great opportunity to learn on that. Alright, now we're going to do a private one, and we don't really have to initiate what's the serialized field or all that, because serialized field just makes it public. Just adding float by itself automatically makes it private. Alright, and we're going to call this the X rotation. Alright. Now on the start, what we're going to do is we're going to set the cursor as invisible. To do this, we're going to do cursor dot visible is equal to false. Alright. Now we're also going to want to lock the cursor. So to do this, cursor dot lock state is equal to cursor.lock mode is equal to locked. This just means that you can't go out of bounds, just like over here. You can't go out from where it needs to be, especially once the cursor is invisible. Now in the update, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but I'll guide you through it. So to get started, we'll just make a float, and we will call this mouse y. Alright, and this is going to be input dot get axis, not mouse position. Get axis, and this is going to be of mouse y. Now that we have that, we're going to times it by time.delta time. And we're going to times it by the mouse sensitivity. So now that we have the mouse Y area, we're going to need the X. So I'll just like to copy this and paste it down here. Mouse X and mouse X. All right, now that we have that, if we wanted to, we could do the invert Y. So this is basically saying if invert Y is set to true, what it's going to do is set the X rotation is plus equal to mouse Y. And then else is going to set the X rotation to minus equals mouse Y, not X. Okay. Now that we have that, what we need to do now is clamp the rotation on the X axis. To do this, we're going to do X rotation is equal to math F dot clamp. No, not clamp one. Clamp the X rotation dot lock vert min and lock vert max right here. Now what this does is it locks it so you can't look too far up, too far down, stuff like that. Now that we have the rotation looking up and locked in that area, what we need to do now is set up to rotate on the Y axis. What we're going to need to do is rotate the camera on the X axis and the Y axis. So we're going to split those up a little bit. So we're going to do transform dot local rotation is equal to a quaternion dot Euler. I'm not sure if I said that right. And we're going to do X rotation 0, 0. So what this is doing is only transforming it on the X axis because this is X, Y, and Z. So we're only doing it on the X axis. All right. Now to do it on the Y axis, what we're going to need to do is transform dot parent dot rotate vector 3 dot up, and we're going to times that by mouse X. All right, this is an easier way that I like to do. Once you call vector 3 dot up, that is actually going for the Y axis, and we're just timesing that by whatever the mouse X is. So now that we have this, what we can do is go ahead and save this, go back into Unity. And before we even use this script, we have to set up the camera in a way where we can actually move around with the player. So in order to do this, the player has to be the parent of the main camera. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pull this forward. All right. And we're going to look at the player, see where the player's stuff is. And it is pointing in the same direction, so we're all good. Now we're just going to pull this up a little bit. All right. Now that the main camera is a child of the player, what we can go ahead and do is drag the camera movement script just up here to the top. All right. And for the sensitivity, I like to put mine at around 400 or 500. It's not too fast, but it's still good. All right, lock minimum is going to be -90. Nope, -90. And the max is going to be 90. This is the Boolean to invert the Y, which is how we described it earlier. Now, if we go and press play, what you're going to notice is you can now move the camera around, and you can move and jump around however you like. And with all that being said, congratulations, you have just created your first player movement script in Unity, as well as a camera movement script. Hope this tutorial helped. Thank you all, and have a good one.